A former casino floor supervisor just revealed something that could save you thousands of dollars. And the casino industry has spent years making sure you never find out. What I am about to share comes from documented internal reports and testimonies from employees who couldn't stay silent anymore. Machine number 1, Wheel of Fortune 3. D slots? Now, this one seems like a safe bet when you walk past it on the casino floor, doesn't it? The familiar theme, the sound of the wheel spinning. Maybe you've even watched the TV show growing up. But here's what former slot technicians report. The quarter denomination version typically has an RTP between 88 and 91%, depending on which casino you're playing at. And that's before we talk about what the machine is actually programmed to do to your brain. Let me tell you about Frank. He's a retiree who walked into a casino with his monthly $800 entertainment budget. 4 hours later, he'd gone through $3,200, and that included money he'd pulled from an ATM twice. What happened? The Wheel of Fortune bonus feature triggered exactly often enough to keep him believing the next spin would be different. Former employees have stated that the wheel spin feature is specifically programmed to land one position away from major prizes at a frequency that defies random chance. We're talking about once every 12 to 15 spins, you'll see that wheel stop right next to the top prize. And here's the thing, it's completely legal. This near-miss programming makes your brain react almost the same way as actually winning, releasing dopamine and making you believe you're getting close. Meanwhile, casinos place these machines in high-traffic areas near entrances and restaurants because they know the sounds and lights will pull people in. Machine number 2 is even worse. Lightning Link has something called a hold and spin mechanic, and according to insider data, the base game RTP sits at about 87 to 88%. The bonus feature that everyone's chasing? Internal documentation suggests it triggers once every 200 to 250 spins on average. A former slot technician actually spoke about what he called designed frustration loops. There's a documented case of a player who tracked 847 spins before the bonus finally triggered, and by that point, they'd spent nearly $180 chasing a $40 payout. But here's where it gets really sneaky. These machines create what's called a persistent state. You see those symbols sitting there on the reels from your last spin, and your brain starts telling you the machine remembers, that it's building towards something. But former employees reveal that each spin is completely independent. Those symbols mean nothing for your next spin, yet players will sit at the same Lightning Link machine for hours because they believe they've invested in it that walking away means losing their progress. The math here is brutal. The average player loses between $150 and $200 chasing a bonus that pays out maybe $40 when it finally hits. And casinos know this. Internal training documents actually teach floor staff to avoid explaining how the random number generator works because educated players leave faster. Before I tell you what machine number 3 is, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comments what's your biggest loss on a slot machine. Because what I'm about to reveal next is where things get really disturbing. Machine number 3, Buffalo Gold. This is one of the most played machines in America, and there's a reason casinos keep entire rows of them. The RTP ranges from 85.5% to 88% depending on denomination, which already puts it below the machines we've discussed. But what makes this particularly dangerous is the volatility model. This is what industry insiders call a high variance machine. A former slot technician provided testimony about how the bonus programming works. You'll see buffaloes stacking up, you'll get those teaser spins where it looks like you're about to trigger the free games, and then nothing. There's this case involving Maria. She was part of a bachelorette party weekend, walked into the casino with $800 that was actually her emergency fund for wedding expenses. 8 hours later, according to documentation from internal reports, she'd gone through $2,800. The super bonus, that's the one everyone wants. The one with the big multipliers? That triggers once every 400 to 600 spins on average based on analysis of the programming specs. Maria kept playing because she'd see other people around her hitting those bonuses, not realizing she was watching the statistical outliers while she sat in the middle of a designed losing streak. Here's what former employees say players don't understand. You're not paying for a chance to win, You're paying for entertainment. But your brain can't tell the difference when those buffalo symbols are lining up and the music is building. And speaking of machines that trick you with rare big wins, machine number 4 takes everything wrong with Lightning Link and makes it worse. Dragon Link. Now, if Lightning Link was aggressive, this is what former employees call the predator version. The RTP sits between 86 and 89%, which means it's actually lower than its cousin. And that's before we talk about what the hold and spin variation does to your decision making. There's this grand jackpot display that sits on top of the machine, numbers climbing, and your brain sees that $50,000 or $75,000 and starts calculating what you could do with that money. But here's what internal casino memos reveal. And yes, these documents exist even though casinos don't want them public. There was a player who actually hit the grand for $12,000. Sounds like a success story, right? This same player, tracked through the casino's loyalty program over 6 months, had documented losses of $31,000. The machine gave back $12,000 of his own money, and he walked away thinking he'd won. The progressive jackpot, that climbing number you're watching, the house takes a percentage before awarding it. You're not playing for the full amount that's displayed, but the psychological impact of seeing those numbers, that's calculated. And here's something former floor managers have admitted. They place Dragon Link machines right next to Buffalo Gold intentionally. You just lost $400 chasing Buffalo symbols, you stand up, you're frustrated, and 3 steps away is Dragon Link, with that grand jackpot display calling to you. They're counting on what they internally call hot streak psychology, this belief that because you just lost, you're due for a win. The math doesn't care about what you're due. Each spin is independent, but casino floor layouts are designed around the fact that your emotional brain doesn't understand statistics. And if you think these 4 machines are bad, let me tell you, the next 5 are where we see the real devastation. I'm talking about life-changing losses, machines that former employees have stated they actually felt guilty watching people play. Machine number 5, Huff and More Puff. Remember earlier when I mentioned a player who lost his house? This is that story. And the details come from internal casino tracking data that a former loyalty program manager couldn't keep quiet about anymore. This machine uses what Aristocrat calls their real power system. It's 1,024 ways to win, which sounds amazing until you understand what that actually means. Your brain sees wins happening constantly, little payouts, celebrations, and you don't realize you're betting $2.50 per spin and winning back 80 cents. The RTP on this machine sits between 85 and 87%, the lowest we've talked about so far, but what makes it devastating is the More Puff bonus feature. Let me tell you about Tony. He was a regular player and loyalty program data tracked him over 3 years. Started at $50 per week, seemed reasonable entertainment budget. Within 8 months, according to internal reports, he was averaging $500 per session, coming in 3 times a week. The machine had given him an $18,000 win during month 5. That's what former employees call the hook. Tony's brain locked onto that memory, convinced he could hit it again. The documented progression is heartbreaking. He took out a second mortgage. The total tracked losses over those 3 years reached $78,000. He lost his house. There are former employees who've spoken about watching this happen, about knowing the math, understanding that Tony was chasing a statistical anomaly, and not being allowed to say anything because casino policy forbids discussing odds or probabilities with players. Here's what makes this even more insidious. The real power system creates this illusion of constant winning because something is always lining up, some combination is always paying out, but you're in a designed deficit the entire time. Your brain isn't calculating net loss, it's responding to the celebration sounds and the win animations. Former slot technicians have stated they felt genuine. Guilt watching elderly players on fixed incomes feed entire social security checks into Huff and More Puff machines, believing they were having fun, not understanding they were being systematically extracted from. But as heartbreaking as Tony's story is, machine number 6 represents something even more dangerous because it doesn't just take your money, it convinces you you're actually winning while it does it. Cash eruption. This is what industry insiders call losses disguised as wins, and it's completely legal. Here's how it works. You bet $2.50, the reels spin, you win $1.75, and the machine erupts in celebration. Lights, sounds, animations, the same dopamine triggering response as if you'd won $500. But you just lost 75 cents. The RTP sits around 87 to 88%, but former employees talk about what they call psychological ERTP, and that's much lower because players don't realize they're losing. The sound design is specifically programmed so that a $5 win sounds identical to a $500 win. Your brain isn't checking the credit meter, it's responding to the celebration. And neuroscience research that casinos absolutely use in their design process shows that dopamine releases in response to the celebration itself, not the actual monetary outcome. There's a documented case involving an elderly woman on a fixed pension. Casino loyalty tracking data, which former employees have revealed tracks everything, showed she was receiving $890 per month in pension payments. Over 14 months, her average monthly losses were $1,200. She was somehow finding ways to spend $300 more than her income every single month. When a floor supervisor finally spoke with her, not because the casino cared, but because they were documenting a potential problem gambling case for legal protection, she genuinely believed she was breaking even. The celebration frequency, how often that machine erupted in lights and sound regardless of actual profit, had convinced her brain she was doing fine. The former employee who reported this case stated he felt guilty every time he walked past her on the floor, watching her feed money into cash eruption with a smile on her face, completely unaware she was financially destroying herself. And here's the thing. It's legal because technically she is winning something. Regulatory agencies haven't caught up with the psychological manipulation. The law says a machine can't celebrate a pure loss, but it says nothing about celebrating a net loss as long as some amount is returned. Casinos exploit this gap ruthlessly. Now we're getting to the final 3 machines on this list, and these represent everything that's wrong with modern slot design. These are the machines where former employees have stated they couldn't stay silent anymore, where the mathematical and psychological manipulation reaches levels that should probably be illegal but aren't. Machine number 7, 88 fortunes. This one represents something particularly calculated, and former employees have described it as cultural exploitation disguised as celebration. The technical specs show an RTP between 87.5 and 90% depending on denomination, which sounds almost reasonable until you understand what the machine is actually designed to do. This machine specifically targets Asian gambling markets by leveraging cultural superstitions about the number 8 and luck symbolism. The Fubat progressive feature, those golden symbols that appear and trigger the jackpot selection screen, that's not random entertainment theming. That's psychological research translated into profit extraction. Here's where the manipulation gets specific. The machine uses an always pay system, 243 ways to win, which creates constant near-miss scenarios. You're seeing winning combinations that almost line up, symbols that are one position away from triggering the bonus, and your brain interprets this as being close to success. But what former slot technicians reveal is even more concerning. To have a chance at all 4 progressive levels, you must bet maximum. The minimum bet might be 50 cents, but to be eligible for the grand jackpot, internal documentation shows you need to wager $3 or more per spin. Players see the progressive meters climbing and assume they're playing for those amounts, not realizing the machine has already decided they're ineligible based on their bet level. There's a case that former employees reference involving a player who understood this requirement and only played maximum bet as a result. One weekend, documented through Pit Boss reports, this player went through $7,500. He hit the mini progressive 3 times, collecting $150 each time. Those wins, $450 total, reinforced his belief that maximum betting was the correct strategy. He walked away down $7,050 but convinced he was playing smart because he'd triggered the progressives. The math is devastating when you break it down, But the cultural symbols, the luck theming, the Chinese characters, and golden imagery, all of it is calculated to lower psychological resistance in the target demographic. Former employees have stated they watch this machine generate more revenue per square foot than almost any other game on floors in certain markets. Casino placement strategy puts 88 fortunes near Asian cuisine restaurants, near specific areas of the casino where targeted demographics congregate. This isn't accidental. This is data-driven psychological manipulation, and the employees who've spoken about it describe feeling complicit in what they recognized as predatory design. But if cultural exploitation disturbs you, machine number 8 reveals an industry-wide trend that affects every single slot player, regardless of background, and it's getting worse with every new machine release. Buffalo Diamond represents what former floor managers call the sequel trap, and once you understand this pattern, you'll see it everywhere. This machine is marketed as the upgrade to the original Buffalo, the next evolution, better graphics, more exciting features. But here's what internal specifications reveal. The RTP is 86 to 88%, compared to the original Buffalo's 88 to 91%. The sequel has worse math, but players assume newer means better. The diamond symbol mechanic looks more valuable, sounds more premium, but it actually pays out less frequently than the standard Buffalo symbols in the original game. This is an industry-wide practice. Former IGT employees have spoken about how sequel machines always have degraded return percentages compared to the original. Dragon Link versus Lightning Link, every Wheel of Fortune variation, every Buffalo iteration, the pattern holds. But casino marketing and game design teams understand that players don't research RTP percentages. They see diamond in the title, they see upgraded graphics and animations, and they assume they're getting a better game. There's a documented case of a lifetime Buffalo player who switched to Buffalo Diamond when it appeared on his casino floor. He'd tracked his own results over years, roughly $15,000 in total losses on the original Buffalo. Within 3 months on Buffalo Diamond, he was down $8,500. A former employee actually helped him understand the mathematical difference, explained that the Diamond version was programmed with worse odds. The player complained to management, and according to that same employee, the casino banned him for what they called advantage play, even though understanding published RTP percentages isn't advantage play at all. The naming psychology here is deliberate. Diamond implies rarity, value, premium quality. Your brain associates the word with something better, and you don't question whether the game mechanics have been degraded. And this is the future model. Every major manufacturer is releasing sequel versions of popular games with worse mathematics, counting on brand loyalty and assumption bias to keep players feeding money into inferior products. And now for the final machine on this list, and I need you to understand that this one represents the blueprint for where slot manipulation is headed. Everything we've discussed, all the psychological tactics and mathematical extraction, this machine combines them into something former employees describe as the perfect predator. Machine number 9, dancing drums. This is the worst offender on this entire list, and what makes it particularly dangerous is that it doesn't rely on just one manipulation tactic. Former employees describe this as layered deception, where every single element of the game is designed to extract maximum money while keeping you completely unaware of what's happening. Let me break down exactly what this machine does to players and why former slot technicians have stated this represents the future of an industry that's already gone too far. The base RTP sits between 85.97 and 88.15%. And yes, those specific decimals matter because this is among the lowest return percentages legally allowed in most jurisdictions. But here's the first layer of deception. That RTP range depends entirely on denomination, and the quarter version, the one most casual players choose, sits at exactly 85.97%. You're losing more than 14 cents of every dollar you put in before you even factor in the psychological programming. And speaking of programming, the FUBAT progressive feature, which the machine constantly teases with those golden symbols appearing and disappearing, you only get access to the full advertised RTP if you're betting enough to trigger all 4 progressive levels. What does that mean in practical terms? You need to bet 4 times the minimum to even reach that 88.15% figure. The machine doesn't tell you this. The pay table doesn't make it clear. Players assume every bet level offers the same mathematical chance, but internal training documentation reveals that's completely false. Now, here's the second layer, and this is where former employees describe feeling genuinely disturbed by what they watched happening on the casino floor. Dancing Drums uses a linked progressive system, banks of machines all contributing to shared jackpot pools, and players believe they're part of this community pot where everyone's bets build toward those grand prizes displayed overhead. But what the programming actually does, according to former technicians who've seen the backend systems, the casino sets a maximum contribution percentage from player bets. You put in $100, maybe 3 cents goes toward the progressive you're chasing. The grand jackpot that's displaying $75,000 and climbing, that's predominantly casino seeded money, not player contributions. One former employee revealed that players funded less than 30% of displayed jackpot amounts in the linked progressive systems he serviced. But when someone finally hits that grand, the casino erupts in celebration, lights flashing across the entire bank of machines. And documented observation shows that within 30 minutes of a grand jackpot win, 47 players across connected machines increased their bet levels, believing they'd just witnessed proof the progressives pay out. The third layer is what industry insiders call the persistence feature, and this might be the most psychologically manipulative element of all. Those Fubat symbols, the golden icons that appear during base gameplay, they remain visible on your screen between spins. Your brain sees them accumulating, sees the visual representation of symbols collecting, and interprets this as building towards something meaningful, as progress toward a goal. But here's what the programming actually does, and former technicians have confirmed this through source code analysis. Each spin is completely independent. Those symbols sitting on your screen mean absolutely nothing for your next spin's outcome. The random number generator doesn't care that you have 7 golden symbols visible. It's not building toward anything. But players believe they've invested in the current machine state, that walking away means abandoning progress. There's a documented case of a player who refused to leave a dancing drums machine for a bathroom break, genuinely afraid that the accumulated symbols meant the bonus was about to trigger. That session, tracked through surveillance and loyalty program data, resulted in $4,200 in losses over 6 consecutive hours. The former employee who reported this case stated he watched someone being destroyed by programming that exploited basic human pattern recognition, and he couldn't legally say anything to help. But the fourth layer, this is what represents the future that should terrify anyone who sets foot in a casino. Dancing Drums is part of a new generation of machines that use multiple manipulation tactics simultaneously, and the trend analysis from former industry insiders shows this is becoming standard. Every new release combines lower RTPs with progressive illusions, with persistence features, with cultural targeting, with celebration manipulation. It's an arms race of psychological extraction, and former employees describe it exactly that way. One quote that's been shared: "We're not designing games anymore, we're engineering psychological weapons, and every new machine is more effective than the last." The regulatory systems haven't kept pace with the neuroscience research that casinos fund and apply. The laws governing slot machines were written for mechanical reels and basic probability, not for machines that use player tracking data to optimize manipulation in real time. And yes, that's what's happening. Casinos track your play history, your loss tolerance, your response patterns, and the newest machines adjust near-miss frequency and bonus trigger timing based on algorithms that analyze your behavior. Dancing Drums represents the blueprint, the combination of every exploitative tactic refined through decades of psychological research. And former employees who've left the industry describe these machines not as entertainment, but as extraction systems designed to take everything you're willing to lose and then push you just a little bit further. Now you know what casinos don't want you to know, and this information changes everything about how you'll see those machines the next time you walk past them. Wheel of Fortune 3D, with its near-miss manipulation programmed to land one position away from major prizes at frequencies that defy actual randomness, Lightning Link and its hold and spin trap that makes you believe the machine remembers your previous spins when every outcome is completely independent. Buffalo Gold with its volatility exploitation, designed to show you just enough buffalo symbols to keep you chasing that super bonus that triggers once every 400 to 600 spins. Dragon Link with its progressive illusion, where the displayed jackpot includes money you're not actually playing for. Huff and More Puff, the machine that cost Tony his house through 1,024 ways to win, that created an illusion of constant success while systematically extracting $78,000 over 3 years. Cash Eruption, celebrating your losses as wins with identical sound design for $5 and $500 payouts, while that elderly woman spent $300 more than her monthly pension without realizing she was destroying herself financially. 88 Fortunes, exploiting cultural superstitions about luck and the number 8 while requiring maximum bets to even qualify for the progressive jackpots displayed overhead. Buffalo Diamond and the sequel degradation pattern, where every newer version has worse mathematics than the original, but premium naming convinces you you're getting an upgrade. And Dancing Drums, the blueprint for future extraction, combining every manipulation tactic we've discussed into layers of deception that former employees describe as psychological weapons rather than games. What these 9 machines share is the pattern. Low RTP combined with high volatility combined with psychological triggers that your brain can't resist without conscious awareness. Former employees reveal that casino floor layouts place these machines strategically, that staff training specifically avoids explaining random number generators or probability, because educated players leave faster, that loyalty tracking systems monitor your every spin to optimize the manipulation. The shift from mechanical reels to digital programming hasn't made slots more fair. It's made exploitation invisible. Player tracking integration means the newest machines adjust their behavior based on your personal loss tolerance. Algorithms analyzing how much you're willing to lose before walking away and then pushing you exactly that far. Regulatory agencies haven't caught up because the industry funds research that stays proprietary, because casino lobbying shapes gambling legislation, because former employees who speak out get labeled as disgruntled rather than whistleblowers. But you're not walking in blind anymore. You understand what those celebration sounds mean when you win back less than you bet. You recognize persistence features as illusions rather than progress. You know that sequel machines aren't upgrades. You're an insider now with information that casinos spend millions making sure never reaches their floor, and that knowledge is protection. Share this with everyone you know who gambles. Tell your friends and family that those machines aren't entertainment systems. They're mathematical extraction tools wrapped in psychological manipulation. Set strict budgets before you walk into a casino, and understand that every single spin is designed to take more than it gives. Never chase losses because the programming counts on exactly that response. Recognize these manipulation tactics in real time and make decisions based on mathematics rather than the dopamine your brain releases when lights flash and sounds celebrate. If this information saved you from even one bad session, if understanding these 9 machines means you'll avoid them completely, then subscribe to this channel because YouTube's algorithm doesn't want casinos seeing this video. Get traction. Let me know in the comments which machine shocked you most, whether you've lost money on any of these specific games, whether this changes how you'll approach slot floors in the future. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, someone who sits at Lightning Link for hours believing the machine remembers them, someone who thinks Buffalo Diamond is better than the original.